This is North Dakota Legislative Review. I'm Dave Thompson. Thanks for joining us. Our guest on the program is the Senate Minority Leader, Senator Joan Heckaman from New Rockford, North Dakota. She's a Democrat. And besides being the Senate Minority Leader, this year you're serving on a lot of conference committees.
Well, I'm on conference committees. I served on a regular Human Services Committee during the session too, so I've kept pretty busy this session.
We'll want to get into the Human Services Bill, which was passed as we're speaking, just got passed today, and we'll talk about that. But I wanted to start with just a general question. Where do you see the stumbling blocks that would prevent an end of a session?
Well, right now, I think most of the stumbling blocks have to do with funding issues that we see. The Human Services budget, of course, is a big one, and we passed that in the Senate just this afternoon, just before I came, and that will go to conference committee. So that bill just came out of regular appropriations committee. That will be a big ticket item going forward. We also have the county social services budget and the takeover by the state, and that came out of the House this afternoon as I was watching the vote over there. I didn't watch the debate, of course, but I see that came forward, and that will go, I'm sure, to conference committee too. And I was hoping it would, because I think it's an important place to put property tax relief right now.
On that particular bill, I wanted to talk about that a little bit because that seems to be a very hot issue right now. Everybody seems to agree that the current 12% buy down that the state put in a couple of bienniums ago, maybe last biennium, that's probably not sustainable, but this because the state takes over payment of county social service programs that the state mandates, that's going to be long-term property tax relief.
That's right, and I'm happy with that. However, the bill now, as it sits coming out of conference, or coming out of committee and coming out of the House, is not fully funded as we hoped it would be.
Now, when you say fully funded, can you explain that a little bit? Because there has to do with some what they call inflators and some hold harmless clauses.
Right, there was a hold harmless clause in that. So take my county, for example. We have a low evaluation for our mill. And so when we generate 20 mills for county social services, it doesn't bring in enough money to fund our program. And so we have to find another access or another source for funding, and they take that out of other funds, general fund and so forth. And so they're levying the maximum amount right now. So in Eddy County, my county, to be held harmless means that the state would pay that 20 mills, plus it would pay the other expenses that they've had in the past biennium. So that is not going to happen now, according to how 2206 is written coming out of the House, and that will probably be a big contentious issue as we go into conference committee.
And for those counties that don't levy the full 20 mills, there was a hold harmless, I believe, to say, okay, you'll get a pot of money to take you to where it would be with that 12% buy down. Right,
and that's true, yeah. However, now the bill is sort of in shambles right now, I would say, on a good note, in the fact that we still do have that buy down there, but the property tax money that we had, close to $300 million, only about $160 million of that is in the county social service bill right now. And so the other 130 or so million they're expecting to use to make up for lost revenue. And that sort of bothers me because that will put, more tax burden on the back of the local taxpayer.
And that was a lot of the argument, is that that money will go toward balancing the budget. And there were some people in the House, and it wasn't all Democrats, there were a couple of Republicans said that we're not quite meeting our responsibilities, what we promised the taxpayers.
Absolutely, and that's my concern too. We have to get to a point where we're either going to fully fund county social services, or else we have to wait 2 years and then do property tax relief now instead. So we've got to make up our minds right now what we're going to do.
So watch for that conference committee, which could be very contentious, perhaps.
I think it will be. I think it will be.
Do you have any idea who the Senate might appoint to the conference committee yet?
No, I don't. In looking at that, we want to make sure we have somebody that has a handle on not only the tax part of it, but also the issues with the county social services that they'll be funding. So that appointment should be coming tomorrow, I would gather.
And today, you had mentioned that the Senate took up the Human Services budget, which is perhaps the largest single budget in state government. It's, what is it, over $3 billion of general fund money?
It's not $3 billion of general fund. It's about
That's right.
$7 billion of general funds. It's over about $3.78 billion of total funds. But the other larger portion of that, over $2 billion, is federal funds and other funds.
What kind of shape is that bill in?
You know, that bill is in really fine shape right now. We hope we can keep it that way. There was really good compromise between, on the subcommittee work on there, between the Republicans and the Democrats on that bill, and also the stakeholders, bringing in what the needs are. You know, there's always the issue of, is this sufficient to meet the needs across the state of North Dakota? And I think Senator Mathern said it best today when he said, we're still not where we need to be, but it's better than where we can be. So, you know, I'm happy with some of the programming that got put back in and some of the funding that's in there right now, and Medicaid expansion is in there, and that was a contentious issue on the floor today.
Senator Larson from Minot had introduced an amendment on the floor to end that program. Of course, that has some ramifications, not only for the Affordable Care Act, but also for the amount of federal money that would come in.
It certainly does. I think about $13 million of state money or general fund money will generate over $200 and some million of federal money coming in, and that's important. But it's also important for the about 20,000 people in the state of North Dakota who are using Medicaid expansion as their health care, for their health care services. That, along with the money that it brings in for our critical care access hospitals, and actually all our hospitals across the state of North Dakota.
What do you think the bill has done in terms of the area of behavioral health?
We've fallen short on behavioral health this session all around. There is some study language in there that will help maybe bring forth issues again, but you know, we had a tremendous effort over the interim by Representative Kathy Hogan and the Human Services section that she chaired over the interim. That brought forth a number of issues. House Bill 1040 was the bill that came out of that interim study, with recommendations for about $28 million of needs across the state of North Dakota.
And that's now down about 400,000, I believe.
It's down to 400,000, right. $27.6 million was removed from that. And so that's the place that we're right now. We're really short on accessing services, having you know, the professionals available, but also having the programs available for the people.
Now, 2 years from now, that problem is still going to be there. Are you holding out hope that 2 years from now there could be enough money to fund some of these programs?
Well, you know, we don't have any idea what's going to happen with the economy. You know, there's projections out there that we've looked at. However, when it comes down to the bottom line, it's only what we take in is what we have. And so there maybe even have to be allotments coming up, because right now we're draining every fund there is out there. I got a document today from Legislative Council showing what the projected funds are for the end of the next biennium, and we're draining everything down. I mean, we're using everything this biennium, and so when I look forward to what's the future is in the next biennium, in the 1921 biennium, we're going to be very low on any kind of excess funding if our revenues don't increase.
So the idea is if oil doesn't come back, agriculture does not come back, and agriculture is sometimes left out of the equation because agriculture is down, but if they don't come back, then you're going to face the same problems again, maybe even some worse problems.
I would think so, you know, and part of this is the legislature's fault, you know. The past tax policies that we've set, not only in corporate tax, the property tax buy-down is an issue that's, you know, looming there. $600 million every biennium is what we put into that, and I think that that's an important one to keep. But we've had corporate tax decreases, and there is a 3-biennium plan coming up that will take will make about $56 million less in corporate taxes in the 1921 biennium, and more than $100 million in the biennium after that, in the way that the tax bill was written last biennium.
Can you go into that a little bit further? How is that going to be affected?
Well, I'm not the tax expert in the Senate, you know that, but I do know that they did a tiered system. They went into, you as a corporation, you could sort of pick which tier you wanted to provide your tax payments to the state on. And the issue with that is probably not the tiered system as much as how much goes out of state. Of that money, we heard from OMB, Office of Management and Budget, of over 80% of that tax relief for corporate income tax goes out of state, and so it's not even circulated in the state of North Dakota here.
Now, speaking of taxes, I've got to go back to property taxes for a second, because the Senate also voted on a property tax bill, and it was the cap bill. Coming out of the House, I believe the caps were 3%. The Senate originally amended it to say, okay, we can do caps if there's an initiative by the people in a county. But apparently that's been removed from the bill now.
Right. Today we worked on that bill. I think it was 1361 was the number of the bill. And we divided the question was divided on the floor, meaning that two parts of the bill were voted on, and then two other parts of the bill were voted on in a separate Part B section. And the part with the caps was defeated on the floor. The part with the reports was accepted right now. So that bill is still alive and will go to conference committee too. So that you never know what's going to happen when conference committees come, that those caps may show up again. And I would guess that if they do, there wasn't much appetite in the Senate for that at all. So
there's not been a lot of appetite in the Senate for caps.
No, there hasn't. No, I think it's something where we feel we're tying the hands of the local people when we do that. The local political subdivisions have to have some leeway here, especially when we as a state aren't able to fund programs and services as we have in the past.
Okay. Back when you mentioned services, I forgot to ask this question, because I've been asking anybody who's been on the program lately, and it goes back to the issue of behavioral health. Because money's not come up to what the Schulte report recommended, or what legislators had hoped for, or what providers had hoped for, are we setting the state up for another ARC-type lawsuit?
I can't say for sure that one's coming forward, but I do know that our services are pretty dismal at this point, and we have people crying for help out there. We have families in dire need. We had an opportunity to put in $7 million of state funds to generate $7 million of federal funds to help children and youth with emotional and behavioral issues, and that was defeated in the Senate also. So right now, when we look across at programming, there hasn't been a lot that's increased from the last two bienniums at all in behavioral and mental health needs across the state of North Dakota. And it's an issue where I've heard conversations about a possible lawsuit, but the people initiating those conversations, I think, are waiting till the end of the session to see if they're still optimistic that maybe something will come up in either the Human Service budget or the OMB budget.
So you're saying, wait, because it's not over till it's over, the old line from Yogi Berra.
It is, that's true. I think I'll have an opportunity to sit on the conference committee for the Office of Management and Budget, the OMB budget, and it gets to be a collection of a lot of things at the end, but it's also an opportunity to know what funding is left or what's available for us to use at the end of the session, that we can capture some of those important issues that were defeated earlier on in the session. And it's not new issues usually, Dave. It's issues we've already talked about and have been defeated.
Yeah, as they say, things can come back around, and the OMB bill has been traditionally where that's gone. That's true.
That's true.
Is there a problem in your mind, and I haven't had a chance to ask anybody this, but I'm going to ask you because you're in the hot seat right now. There seems to be, try to stick to a rule of germaneness. But some of these things that get put on OMB, I think some people could argue that it stretches germaneness a bit. True or false?
I think that's a true statement. I think you've hit the nail on the head there too. The issue right now for me going into the OMB budget is I would like to only put things in there that have been thoroughly vetted in either the Senate or the House or in both and have been defeated, because I think it's only fair for stakeholders to have the opportunity to come in and tell us what the needs are, or if there's something that we're thinking about doing, tell us why it's not good public policy to do that.
Now, there seems to be some not necessarily on the OMB bill, although something might end up on the OMB bill. There seems to be some real points where it's kind of, immovable object versus irresistible force. One seems to be in the PERS situation, especially with the self-insurance plan, and with Dickinson State University with the Theodore Roosevelt Center, which it seems to be those two might be at loggerheads, in a way that happens in legislative sessions.
Well, I'll take the Theodore Roosevelt first. Dickinson State does need some help right now. And as a person whose education is really important to me, I'm willing to put the dollars in there right now. And I think if we do that for a couple of sessions, Dickinson State will straighten out. They've had their bumps along the road. Hasn't been all of their doing. It's been a combination effort, I would say, out there. And the Theodore Roosevelt Foundation Library has some funds available, and there's going to be some proposals coming in on how to use those funds and help Dickinson State out. And it's a university we need in Western North Dakota. You know, the services that they provide, the programming that they have are important for workforce development around the state, but in Western North Dakota especially.
Could these be bargaining chips, though?
They may.
Yeah.
They may be, but on the other hand, they're issues right now too. They're important issues, and they're significant issues for Dickinson State. And as far as, what was the other question, the PERS?
Yeah, the self-insurance plan, and the bill that funds PERS is going into a conference committee too, and the House put some things on there, and the Senate stripped them all off and made it just basically a budget bill with a study.
Right, yeah. As far as the self-insurance plan, I sat in on that committee the other day. We had a senator at a funeral, and so I sat in on that committee, and that bill is coming out with a 5-0 do not pass. So I think as far as self-insurance, that hasn't been studied. The needs out there for that haven't been punctuated or elicited any place across the state as that's the way to go. Now, just because other states do it doesn't mean that we have to do it here. One of the things about the self-insured plan is that we insure retirees. And when you get to that retirement age, then your health care costs increase. If you're going to do a self-insurance plan, it's got to have enough people in the plan to have all ages in there. And while we do have some young people on that, I can't say we don't. We insure the retirees in the state, and that makes it a little bit more difficult to do a plan like that.
But if the Senate does defeat that, the PERS budget bill is still there.
Right.
And that might be a vehicle for that thing to come back.
And that's what the end of the session is. It's the bargaining chips that are out there. And I hate to say that that's the way we do business in the legislature, because we should just sit down at the table and say, here's the issue. What are the benefits of this? What are the difficulties if we do this? And then work from there. But that's not how it happens, and you know that as well as I do. So a lot of thought will go into how to get the best bargain and the best deal as we go forward.
It's the typical third period of a hockey game. You're getting close, and you have to pull the goalie sometimes.
It does. It is. Yep. So.
What else do you see as potential sticking points that could cause some very controversial or contentious committees?
Well, right now I think higher education budget, they're trying to work on that in conference committee. I think they're getting closer on that. The DOT budget still has some issues with it. I think they're working on some issues in the DOT budget, but any big budget has issues as we go forward. It's the smaller agencies and the smaller budgets that have come forward now that they've been able to work out the minor issues on. But as we get into all of these big budgets, whether it's DOT, the Water Commission, that's the big budget for the state of North Dakota with all the development and projects that are out there right now. And I think one thing that's going pretty smooth right now is the K through 12 education and DPI budget, Department of Public Instruction. I think those are pretty solid right now and are rolling along pretty smooth. But
what about the situation up at Grand Forks at the Mill and Elevator, where the House proposed ending that program of profit sharing?
Right. I think right now that's probably a contentious issue in conference committee too. I know that my caucus is supporting the workers up there, and the fact that they were given the profit sharing plan as part of their overall salary and incentives, and we're really working hard to keep that for them.
So do you hold out hope that that can be saved?
I think so. I think they can. You know, the power of the email and the power of conversation is still strong in the North Dakota legislature. You know, we read our emails, we look at them, but the personal contact and having someone come up to you and say, can you help us out and can you do this? Will you help our workers do this? And that's really important right now too.
Here's a left field question I have to ask because I sat through this conference committee. It's on the highway patrol budget. It's a small budget, but there's There's something optically that I know has some people just saying, oh, do we have to do this? There was, of course, metal detectors put up at the Capitol at the beginning of the session, and now they probably will be made permanent. House Senate conferees have agreed on that. How do you feel about that?
It's hard to say how I feel about it personally. I think professionally as a legislator or as a professional person in the Capitol, it's a security measure. Personally, I don't think we need them in North Dakota. You know, it started with some of the issues with pipeline protests last summer. Those have been calmed down. I think we're pretty common sense here in the state of North Dakota. However, the issue with that lies with the Highway Patrol and the security they feel that they have to provide. I understand by listening to Prairie Public Radio on the way here today that they are going to continue with one at the south entrance for the public, and the other entrances will be key card entrances.
That's correct.
For employees. And you know, I worked at a school where we had metal detectors in the morning when the kids on the bus and the staff came in the morning. So it's not like it's intrusive to me, but I think to some of the public it throws up a red flag.
Yeah, it may be just a new reality that the state is facing, that virtually every other Capitol building in the country has these kind of security measures in place. The one thing, there's going to be a little pot of money for tasers too. And I didn't mention that in the story, and should probably.
I didn't hear about that, Dave. So, and I would suspect that would be there too. You know, I don't think there's ever going to be an incident in the state of North Dakota in our capital, but you can't say that no, it's not needed, given the fact that across our country, any kind of intrusive actions are increasing, and we always want to be safe and make sure our state workers are safe too.
When the session started, you know, leadership was talking about trying to hold 10 days in reserve. I'm hearing a little maybe hedging on that bet.
We'll not have 10 days to save. No, we won't. We did not gavel in on Tuesday, which provides another day, last Tuesday, and so, or this Tuesday, excuse me, and so that gives us another day on the calendar actually to use. However, I think that we could get our work done in less than 80 days, but that's going to take some compromise, and it's the conference committee's work that's the difficult work right now. And I can give suggestions to my people, and they can give suggestions to me, and how it's working, and we can converse and try and convince the other conferees on the importance of getting this work done. But I know one conference committee is fighting over $918 right now. I just don't think that we have time here in the state of North Dakota when we're working on important issues like behavioral health and the safety of our people and to worry about $918.
So you will save some.
We will.
And that, if you have to come back, then you've got some days in reserve, because and you know as well as I do, if the governor calls the legislature back into session, there's no limit on how long you can meet.
Right, and I think it's important that we do save some days. You know, we don't know what's going to go on in Washington with the health care issue. You know, it's been pretty much put on the table, but that could surface any time, and there's a number of issues that could come up federally that we would have to address, or even locally. You know, sometimes as we go along and we have extra days, we haven't always used them. But last session was an anomaly, and we did, and we're not done with this session yet. So.
No, I think the next few days, maybe the next 5 or 6 days, might be very interesting, very telling about what might happen. Do you know offhand what seems to be the projection now in terms of an ending fund balance?
Well, I looked at the documents that Legislative Council gave me today, and I have all the funds, all the total funds. Ending fund balance, you know, it's varied from anywhere from 20 million on up to 70, 80, and 100 million. So I can't say right now because funds are moving around yet, and I don't want to give you a number that says this is what we're going to end up with, because until all the conference committees are done and OMB budget is done, we won't know. And
that OMB budget will likely be the last bill you're going to work on, I suppose.
It usually is, but that hasn't been the case in the past. One year it was the education bill. So,
and then PERS
and
2 years ago.
Yeah, PERS too.
So the PERS issue continues to hang up there.
It does,
as well.
It does.
So here's a question I've been asking people in leadership positions. I'll ask you too. Do you want to return as leader next time?
Well, Dave, that's a good question. I've been so busy this session that I haven't even taken the opportunity to see how I'm doing as a leader. My caucus has been always busy, and so right now I'm enjoying my session, and I think we've done a lot of good work, even though we're only a few people in the Senate caucus. You know, there's only 9 of us, and we've worked really hard in committee. We get along really well with each other. I think we're bringing issues forward that we need to bring forward. And if I'm back next year, I have to run for election in the next session, you know, so I would enjoy running again for leadership.
So you're going to have to stand for election.
I do. In 2018, I'll be for election again.
Okay, one quick question to kind of wrap this up. Briefly, what do you think of the freshman class?
Oh, the freshman class, we have 1 freshman in our class, and they have several. The Republicans have several. They've done an outstanding job. They have. They've come into the work. They've been serious about the work. And I have to say that, and you know this too, that the Senate is a little different animal than the House is. You know, we're a little bit calmer, and we get along very well together, and we're sort of like one big family.
Great, and we'll have to leave it right there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our guest today on Legislative Review, Joan Heckeman, State Senator from New Rockford, who is the Senate Minority Leader. For Prairie Public and Legislative Review, I'm Dave Thompson.